my head.
I get that.
It's just not a thing. Hey, everybody out there on Lebanon Now. Welcome to what I hope to be a series of interviews. We have State Rep Melissa Schmidt with us today, and we are going to sit down and have a talk. Session's over. Mm-hmm. It was a wild one.
It was.
And you're from here. You're from the area. You represent us. And I graciously asked her to come down and sit and talk to us and our viewers just about the session, some of the things that happened, some of the questions you guys have government work. Now, this is live. We can take we can take live comments and stuff. Just be respectful. Be nice. We don't understand how nice everybody is on the internet, and we shouldn't expect any of that, but sometimes we do. So how are you doing today? Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. I'm excited. I've been excited to sit down with you and kind of visit. It was a wild session. It was my first session, so it was wild for a couple of reasons, but I just appreciate being with you today.
Well, I appreciate you. Like I said, I appreciate you agreeing to it. First off, let's just start from the beginning, because I think one of my favorite parts about the things we talked about was you wanted to do this for a while, but you decided, I'm going to wait till my kids are grown.
Yeah. So about a 30-year goal, honestly. About 30 years ago, I was doing some grassroots efforts at the Capitol for different non-for-profit organizations here locally, actually. And it was then that I kind of got a taste for the difference we can make from the state government if we send the right people there. But it wasn't my time. It just wasn't time for me. So just continued working in my community and walking through doors that were open to me. And honestly, when it did become time for me to run, it was just a natural extension of the way I've tried to serve my community. And it was just another opportunity, that I could go and do and be a voice for my neighbors.
As I'm doing this thing, the Lebanon Now, I've noticed it's a lot of service. I get up at 4:30 in the morning to make sure people have the news, and this is the goal. But politics is the one thing I would never do. Like, I will serve everybody, and I'll serve our community, and I'll do that. But when it comes to politics, I'm out. So what is it that made you go, politics is the way I'm going to serve?
So I think, I'm not a politics lover either. In fact, I've had people say, I can't believe you're doing that. I hate politics. For me, it's not because I love politics. It was just another opportunity that I felt like I could make a difference for issues that matter to me and that I think matter to our district. And so I was just willing to tolerate the politics part of it because I think I can do some good things for my people.
What is your favorite part about being a politician, being involved in the government and doing the things that you do? What are those things that when you get up in the morning, you're like, man, I get to go do this thing?
Yeah. I think what I love the most is just knowing I love being in our communities. I love being around people. I love hearing the conversations of, this is something that we went through that was a struggle. I wish there was someone that could help us. And I'm like, oh, pick me. Maybe I can help. Let me see how I can help. So that's probably my favorite part, is addressing problems and then actually being able to come to a solution of some kind to help other people. And that's a good chunk of what our office does. So it isn't just about, bill writing and legislating. We also have opportunity to help veterans get their veteran card a little sooner. Or, this last session, we helped a full mission trip who they were having a delay with their passports and it was time to leave for the mission trip. And so we were able to expedite that. So just some of those simple ways too, to just be helpful. That's my favorite thing to do in general, is just help other people.
And your job's not, and I think that's a good thing, because your job's not only legislation.
That's exactly right.
Going outward, looking from the out in, it seems like legislators, representatives, senators, they show up, they vote, they go home, and that's it. They read a bunch of stuff nobody else would read. Vote how somebody tells them to and goes home. That's really...
Sadly, that is the perception of what we do, which is why most people don't like politicians. But it is not like that. Now, I'm sure there are some who function that way, because in any type of profession, you're going to find folks who aren't there with the right motivations. But what I have found for me personally, and actually a lot of my colleagues, I represent 4 counties. So I share my district with 3 other reps. And those 3 guys, all gentlemen, all are there for the right reasons. And so I've been fortunate to see folks really do it for the right reason. Yes, we do read a lot of things that other people don't read. We do take votes. And something I shared with Rotary last week was how I take a vote. And that's a very interesting process too. Again, it isn't how every senator or rep takes a vote, but I love the process I've been able to come up with. And at some point, we can talk through that too. But you're right. That is the outward looking in perception of what we do. And I have said that, to folks who are like, oh, now you're a politician. I hate politicians. And I'm like, do you actually know what I do? Let me tell you what I do, because it's not just.
Yeah. And I think that's as we get older and when you get more politically involved. I'm very civically involved. Yeah. I'm not very politically involved.
Yeah.
I just don't want to be.
Sure.
But as you go, you start understanding it's more of that. It's more of a different perception than what they taught you in civics class in 8th grade. But unfortunately, a lot of people's education about politics doesn't come much farther than civics in 8th grade.
That's right.
So before I get to the second part, which is what do you hate about this, is what is a couple of the things that people would never think is actually your job?
Probably just that help piece, like the fact that I actually can help folks. And, this is probably something that people don't realize either. One of my counties has been hit really hard since November with different storms, tornadoes, and then they suffered fires, and then they suffered flooding, and then they suffered, and so those boots on the ground opportunities that we get to actually go deliver water and help stand in the yard, with a constituent whose house has now been destroyed from tornado, and I can access some help for that person at the state level and at the federal level. I love that part of it. And I'm not sure everyone understands or even sees some of those, just personal interactions that I get a chance to have with constituents. The sad thing too is a lot of times we form our opinions of politicians based on what we see at the federal level.
Yes.
Those guys don't always behave.
No.
And so they assume we're all like that.
It's a little WWE is really
it can be
kind of how, I don't even look at politics nationally anymore.
Sure.
I made a vow, and I can't say that I don't. I mean, I'm aware of them, but I don't really get involved. I don't get in conversations about it. I don't because it maybe I'm talking out of turn. You can absolutely tell me if I'm not, because a national Republican is not maybe the same as a state level. As a state level.
That's right.
Same thing with Democrats. Same thing with independents, because the needs here are different. So when one party or the other acts a certain way, and then we take out some sort of bias between that party, maybe the person that's representing you doesn't have the same bias, but since they have the same letter in front of their name, you get accused of all that.
That's exactly right. And, state level government, we actually do come together for the most part, and work together for the good of Missourians. It's not always easy, but there is usually that census. And what I found too is that we all kind of have that same mission. We just have a different view of what working for the good of Missourians looks like.
Yeah.
And so if we'll actually stop and listen to each other, we're not too far apart.
No.
It's a matter of compromise. It's a matter of, okay, how can I give and take a little so that we can get good things accomplished for Missourians? And you are so civically involved, and I love that. We have wonderful civic organizations in Lebanon, and for me, in all of my district, really, for me, stepping into the state role was really just an extension of that. This is how I've helped locally. Now let me see what I can do to help at the state level. I want to stay focused that way. And one of the best pieces of advice I got when I first was elected actually came from our governor. And he said, do not let this new role change you. And that is my everyday focus. I am not going to change. I pledged that at Rotary. I will not change, but it is a daily challenge.
And that's kind of why I've always said I'm not going to do this. Is that once you get in, and I think this might be the forward to what I'm getting ready to ask you, what you hate about it, there seems like there's a lot of rules.
Are some rules.
So if I see a hungry person, I'm like, I'm going to go feed this hungry person. Or if I see a need, I'm just going to go do the need. I'm just going to go in my level of thing. Or I'm going to throw a thing on Facebook and go, hey, somebody go take care of this need.
Right.
That's not the same.
So it's twofold, really. I can still do that as a person.
Yes.
I can still do that.
Oh, right.
But then I also can say, I can do that as a person, but what else can I do at the state level?
Right.
What can I do in this role to also help that bigger picture, right? So homelessness is very important to me, especially when it comes to our veterans. And so veteran homelessness is something will be tackling next session, full force, but I have been tackling one-on-one for a while. And so it's just kind of an expansion of what we are already doing personally. But you're right. When we put a program to it, then we have to follow all the rules.
So I'll just flat out ask, what is the worst part about, because this is your first session?
It's my first session.
It's my first session. So
I think what I've said all along is I genuinely love my communities, and the role puts me in Jefferson City, Monday to Thursday, January to May, and it is not my home.
No, I
clearly
used to see you
not
all
my
the time.
home.
Then I never see you.
Right.
And now I see you all the time again.
I'm back. And it's probably that I genuinely miss going to Jude's every morning for coffee. And now I have developed relationships there at the Capitol and with my colleagues. That's an important part of the work. But I daily miss home, my home. But I miss my communities. That's the toughest part.
So let's get into a little bit, because this is your first session, and you get to go and you get sworn in, and you go up there. What was one of your biggest surprises?
I think, and I'll just be totally candid with you, is that we aren't all there for the same reason, right? So I know what has motivated me to step into that role. That's not exactly what has motivated everyone else. And not that I was shocked by that, but sometimes it is a little disheartening. And I do find myself being the one that's continually saying, oh, wait, just a minute. How does this affect the people?
Right.
And there has to be that voice. And I don't by any means want to say I'm the only one bringing that to the table. But that's probably one of the things that I just was a little disheartened about. Let's all try to be here for the right reasons, which is our people.
Yeah.
It is easy to lose sight of who put you there and who you're really there for. That's not an easy job. I have 37,000 people in my district. All state reps do have about 37,000-ish people. And we have to make decisions based on what's best for all those folks. And it's a pretty diverse district. Mine is especially, but the entire state's pretty diverse if you think about it. So
it really is. I've got the pleasure of going all over the United States, live in a lot of different places. I lived in Manhattan for a while. You were talking about diverse, right? Yeah. You look terrified by that.
Yeah. I know. I don't want to live there. I visit. I don't want to live there.
I was there for like 10 months and then I lived in Laredo, Texas for a while.
Yeah.
So diversity.
Yes.
But realistically in Missouri, it is.
Yeah.
We tend to stick to our neighborhood, stick to our people. And as much as I use social media, it kind of puts us in that echo chamber.
Yeah.
But you don't have to go very far to look in Springfield or to look in Branson or look at very, very close Fort Leonard Wood. That's a whole nother place.
It is.
Because you have people from all over the world and a lot of them stay. A lot of them come back and a lot of them stay. So that's got to be a challenge to represent everybody, because you don't strike me as the type of person to go pull the voter rolls and go, Laclede County's 80% Republican. That makes it easy.
Yeah.
Right. You don't seem like the type of person to do that.
No, I genuinely try to hear. And, you said you don't have to go very far. I can just go from one county to the next in my district, and that's different.
Yes.
The needs are different. The economic levels are different. The parenting desires, it's all different, even just from one of my counties to the next, right? And so what I really try to do, and this goes back to how I take a vote, is hear my constituents and weigh that out. Now, even that's not as easy as one might think, because there are things that I'm going to know about issues just because of my position that my constituents may not know, right? So that's my job, to not only be their voice to the Capitol, but also be the voice from the Capitol back and help them understand, this is what all was in that vote. This is what the long-term effects would be, because I'm not just making decisions for today.
Yeah.
I'm making decisions for future Missourians too.
Because we all know once something becomes a law, it's horribly hard to make it not a law.
That's right.
It's difficult, but reversing or moving one, as we've seen, is almost impossible.
Right.
So the decision you make can affect people way after you're shaken from the mortal coil and not even hearing.
That's exactly right. Yeah. And that's why the weight of every vote, I have carried the weight of every single vote. Every time I take a vote in committee or every time I push that button on the House floor, I really carry the weight of that vote because I understand it's not just about me, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's not even just about my people. It's about 37,000 people and a statewide of constituents. So those are pretty heavy to take. Now, fortunately, we have a system in play, right? So the votes we take in the House and the things that we pay out of or pass out of the House also have to go to the Senate, and they've got to do their due diligence there too. But I take it seriously. It's a serious role.
So let's talk about some of the legislation that happened while you were there.
Sure.
You pushed a lot of things through.
I did.
You went there to work. That's what I got. You went there from work. So let's talk about some of your achievements in foster care and family stuff.
Yeah, thank you for that. I did. I went there. My predecessor had left a few things unfinished that were just so close last year, and so they were great pieces of legislation. So there was a foster care pension piece. So kiddos who are placed in foster care and have a deceased parent who left pension dollars, they were not accessible to the child, and so House Bill 737, which is ready for Governor Kehoe to sign, would put those dollars back in the hands of the child, just like the parent intended. And so we put a child advocate in place at age 17 that will help them make those decisions. But that was an important piece of legislation. It was a priority of our leadership as well. So I know nothing's ever done alone.
Nope.
So it takes colleagues and leadership and constituents. It takes a lot of work, as it should. But that was one piece. And then we did also pass, and this was a brand new piece of legislation, zero cost adoption. So allowing a fund that would make adoption a free process in the state of Missouri. So it would prioritize adoption for children out of foster care, but it's also available for private adoption. So we want to make adoptions as easy and as affordable as possible in the state of Missouri. So very excited about that. It also has funds available for those wraparound services after adoption. We want those adoptions to be successful. And so sometimes, there's additional costs. And so that fund would be available for that. It also is ready for Governor Kehoe to sign. And then the final piece is something that I actually helped work on last year as a constituent. So lots of times the best pieces of legislation come from our people. And so last year I helped, but it didn't get across the finish line. But this year it's also ready. And it's a workforce development piece of legislation in the area of childcare regulation. And so just streamlining that process so that more facilities can get open and more people can get back to work.
Let's back up to the first one, because I'm a Rotarian. You're a Rotarian. I heard you. I heard you speaking, and I was just blown away by this first one you were talking about, that the state of Missouri, if somebody was left a pension and then that kid went into foster care, state of Missouri absorbed that entire pension.
They did.
How did that become a thing? Like, how? That was annoying to even know that ever.
I was shocked. Happened. And, foster care is part of Aaron and I's background. So it's not like the foster care system is new to us. But even when that was brought to my attention, I'm like, what? That's not happening, right? It was happening. And it wasn't that the state of Missouri was being malicious towards these children. I honestly just think it was something that just needed to be addressed and hadn't been. But it was $8 to $10 million a year. And so, it's substantial. That's a substantial amount of dollars for kids who are aging out of the program or the system. And they need the dollars. They need education. They need housing. They need transportation. And we want them to have those starts so that they're successful in our communities. That's what we want for them. Right? And we're responsible for that.
Yes.
And so, I think you probably heard me in Rotary say that the other side of that was because we were using those funds, then we had to find that in our budget so that we wouldn't have dollars gone. We were able to still care for children. And we did find it. But the truth is those were never our dollars to be used like that. So I'm just thankful. I will say the department was very helpful in helping us work out a system and get that fixed. So needed to be done.
No, absolutely. And kudos to you to going in there fighting for kids and doing the thing that needs to be done. I think everybody likes to do it as a poster or a hot button issue or to say they're going to do it. But when I was doing, I did do a little research for this.
Thank you.
For everything that you have a fingerprint on was about foster care, helping kids, and just helping that system that currently I've been interviewing people because I'm doing a small documentary about the foster care system in Lebanon.
Yeah.
And not everybody's happy with it.
Right.
Not everybody
We have a lot of work
likes
to
it.
do.
And a lot of people have to exist inside of that world because of the rules. Because anytime, and I see this a lot, anytime you're a federal employee, you work anywhere inside of that, you have to go, or federally regulated, you have to go by the rules given to you.
That's right.
And you're changing those rules to more benefit the kids and to help people with that. And kudos to you for changing those rules.
Well, I'll say too that the role of state rep, I mean, we can change those rules through legislation, but we also have other opportunities. So in the off session, I plan to sit with the department and we're going to work through some of those rules and regulations and make some changes, similar to what we're doing with the child care regulation piece of Office of Childhood under DESE. So Governor Kehoe issued an executive order for those to be looked at and rewritten and some of those things to be done. And so it's not legislative, but it is an opportunity that I get because of my legislative role to work through those things. And the foster care system needs, as anyone who's involved with it, we just really need a complete overhaul. There's a lot of missing pieces there, a lot of things that are falling through the cracks. And unfortunately, that is hurting our children, right? And so that's our job always. You mentioned kudos for coming in and fighting for children. The dynamics of the House of Representatives is that everyone brings something to the table, right? All 163 legislators have a background and an expertise and a passion. And that's the point, is that we all come as a voice for our people, but we also come with our passions and our backgrounds. And that just happens to be, my passion and my background. So I knew very clearly I'd be fighting for children and families.
Yes.
But also, there's so much space for veterans, as we talked about, our aging community, so many other things, our law enforcement support. Those things are vitally important to me too. So just watch, because next session I'll be picking up some of those things too. But I think it's important that we're always fighting. That's what we have to be doing.
And forgive me for not knowing this.
No.
Do you have a 2 or 4 year term? What is your term?
So we are reelected every 2 years.
Yes.
So I'll also be campaigning next year. So I have to be reelected. And then 8 years is our gap. Yep. And I've got a lot of work to do. I need all 8 years. I need it all. We've got a lot to do.
And we do have some people watching.
Oh, sure.
So we have a couple questions, and one kind of leads into, for everybody thinks this is going to be totally softball, let's talk and be friends. Melissa knows.
We're friends, and I can take a hardball. Yeah. That's okay.
So Adam Fries asks, once the bills are on the governor's desk, is there anything we constituents can do, i.e. letters to him to push him or to give opinions? Because sometimes those die on a desk, correct?
Yep.
So he's asking, is there something constituents can do to help move that along?
Well, first of all, hello, Adam Fries, one of my favorites. Probably can't say that. I don't have favorite constituents. I love them all. But yes, I think there's always something you can do, even before it hits the governor's desk. So I think I hit on this a little bit in Rotary, but we do rely on our constituents so much. So please do always be reaching out, not only to your state reps, but yes, to Governor Kehoe's office and to your senators. There are websites that are pretty easily accessible, and we need to hear from you. So yes, exercise that, say what you need to say. It matters. I mean, that really does matter. We hear those things.
And I want to, correct me where I'm wrong here, to put it down into the way people understand. When you go to fast food and you get a receipt, and on the back of it says, we'll give you a free burger if you give some feedback, right? That's not a scam. They really do want your feedback.
Will do that.
They don't want you to be a Karen and throw things while you're in there.
That's right.
Don't do that. But they do want logical, well-written or well-spoken feedback to understand how their impact is on there. When representatives go, I want to hear from the people, they really do. At least Melissa does. I
want
know
to hear
for sure that you do, because you take that into consideration and you do that.
Yeah, that's right.
So let's get into the harder questions, right? There was some controversy in the Missouri Senate that went national. Like there was a lot of news. There was Prop A, and I blanked on the name of the other bill.
Amendment 3 of the abortion bill?
Yes, the abortion amendment, yes. Those two went to a vote. The voters voted for a certain thing, and Missouri overturned those. to a certain extent, or reformed those.
Right.
So let's start with the more sticky one, the abortion one.
Sure.
Right. So take us through your decision or what you guys are doing.
Yeah.
I'm going to let you have the floor.
I think so. Exactly what we said. We heard from constituents, right? And so early on, we heard from constituents who either voted no, point blank, on Amendment 3 because they had some concerns about the language and some of the vagueness. And so they voted no, right? But then there were even some constituents who voted yes and then came back later and realized some of what they voted yes on, they wouldn't have actually voted yes had they understood. And so we really heard from our voters, our constituents. And so there was a team formed, a working group at the Capitol of legislators and senators who worked together to come up with, okay, we feel like our people are asking for this to come back to the ballot with some clarifying language, right, to tighten up a few areas. For instance, the regulations for the healthcare providers who are giving these abortions and these procedures. The regulations were not clear, not specified, and we all want regulated healthcare, right?
Yes.
We all want to make sure that facilities that are offering healthcare of any kind, our dentist office, right, needs to be regulated. So some clarification language to make sure that procedures were health and safe for women. There were some concerns about some parent rights questions, these abortions for minors and not making sure parents are in the loop on that. Some of my constituents in particular were concerned. So what we did was just go back to the table, clarify some of these things. It's going to go back to the ballot. It had to pass, of course, the House and the Senate, but it will essentially go back to the people where they will assess it again. So we haven't taken their voice, but we've actually heard their voice and said, we hear you. We've cleaned it up, we've clarified it, and we're going to put it back to you. And I think, this is what I say to people all the time. Over 70% of my district voted no. Yes. But there were some of my folks who voted yes, but they're the ones too that came back and said, oh, wait, I didn't realize what I was voting for in some instances. And so I think, we if it's fair to put that back. If people voted on me, yes. And they're going to vote on me again, right? They're going to reassess that decision again. So I think that's okay.
One of my biggest questions, and I love having you here because we can do some civic stuff too. And I seen David ask the one about Prop A, and we're going to get to that.
We're going to get there. Yes, you bet.
Promise. But the problem I think with some of these bills that I see is that they're written by lawyers.
Sometimes,
or they're written in a way that's not exactly plain. Like it's not like when you're 5 and like, do you like me? Yes or no.
Exactly.
It's got circular language. Yes. It's got things.
That's right.
So then you turn on your TV, and because there's circular language there, one side says it benefits this, one side says the other. They're trying to trick you. No, you don't do this, don't do that. So how do you know you do, but my viewers out there and people, how do you know, or where can you go to get a clear picture of what you're voting for?
What it actually is. And that was some of the feedback too, is that, the ballot language is a little confusing. And so that was a goal when we were rewriting the ballot language. The goal is that it's very clear, very plain. That way, when you're going in, you know exactly which way you're going. But, there are, my social media is for constituents. I try to keep a very heavy presence on Facebook, especially. That's where most of my voters go. And I try to post information there so that people can really do their own research. In fact, if you heard me on the campaign trail, a good chunk of what I always said was, do not just take what you're being fed at face value. Do your own research, look at both sides, compare. And so I think, I always point people back to my own Facebook page just for some of that research, because I do try to provide it there. But you're right, it can be very misleading and going into those polls. And I am all for hearing the voice of the people. That's the whole point, right? And so we are not trying to take away what the folks have said. We actually are trying to hear the folks who are asking for clarifying and to make sure that we go back to the ballot with this.
Okay. And I think that's fair.
I do too.
My curiosity question is, so we reformed it, it fails. then does the original stay in place?
Yes.
Okay. That's kind of what, while you were talking, I was like, so
because the ballot language will say, do we want to amend the Constitution? So currently what we passed in Amendment 3 is in the Constitution.
Yes.
So should this ballot measure fail, we won't be amending it. It will be.
And up until that vote or the outcome, what the voters voted for is still in effect.
It is, except there was just a judge ruling from the Supreme Court that has halted abortions in the state of Missouri. And it goes back to those healthcare regulations and making sure that those are in place, which I think is fair too. Let's pause and make sure that these are safe procedures. I think, like I said, regardless of where you fall on the abortion conversation, you're pro-choice, you're pro-life, you're somewhere in the middle, I think what everyone can agree on is all healthcare should be safe and regulated, right? And so I think that is where we're at with that one.
Fair enough. So let's move on before we run out of time, because I know you have to. No.
Yeah, I could talk all day. I mean,
we talk. Getting us to shut up is always the
That's
trick,
exactly right.
That's where I live anyway. So Prop A. Prop A was, if you guys don't know it, was the bill that said mandatory time off, sick leave, minimum wage benefits. It was kind of called the workers' bill, and it passed. I don't remember the margin. I looked this morning, but it passed pretty well. And then it goes to you guys, and you guys change it.
Yep. So similar.
I've got a few people in the comments
that are asking. Sure.
Yeah.
So it's a little different than the amendment, right? So the amendment, we could not just legislate and change because that was amended and added to the Constitution. Okay. So the proposition, though, yes, the people voted on, and we do then have the logistic power to make a few changes to that. And again, based on hearing from people, hearing from constituents, hearing from small and large businesses as to how the full impact of Prop A would affect businesses and would trickle then down to workers and communities, we had to come to a compromise. And the compromise, and it's not final, it's not finished. The Senate is still working through some of those things before they get it to Governor Kehoe, but the compromise was that the minimum wage piece would stay, but there would be the repeal of the sick leave for part-time. And so that is what they're working on right now. It does not mean that we could not come back next year and make an additional compromise that allows some sick leave, right? And I think that's probably what we're going to see happen. But that goes back to, we have to make decisions for all of our constituents.
Right.
And so that's where that compromise came for Prop A.
And I asked you this question before and made sure that we were cool, that you didn't get mad at me on air for asking.
Never mad at you.
But if you take a step back and look, for a lot of people that I've talked to, it looks like the government favored business over the worker.
Sure.
We have a lot of different markers in a lot of different states and countries or whatever, that workers have different rights. And that's a thing state to state here as well. And it seems like the people said, hey, we want these rights. And then the legislation went, no.
Right. Yeah, I can see where it would look like that. I think the key word is compromise and making sure that, we are hearing our small businesses, which is really the ones it was going to affect the hardest. And weighing out, do we want to lose these small businesses entirely because they can't afford to do this?
Right.
Which means, like I said, the trickle down, folks then lose their jobs entirely. Communities lose small businesses that we love. Or can we bring this back to the table, make a compromise that is still good for the worker with the minimum wage piece and still keeps our businesses open? But like I said, my hope is we come back again and have that conversation where we can again compromise so that there is some form of the sick leave piece in place too. Small business is part of my background, and I'm someone that has signed the front of the check and the back of the check. So I understand all the pieces there.
Not to interrupt, I was going to say, Lebanon Now is a small business, right? We're getting ready to hire a third employee.
Sure.
Right. And sometimes we contract with our marketing companies, we do this, but it's a consideration when you sit down, like somebody that's never had employees before. I mean, managed or whatever.
Right.
But you mean, I got to pay taxes on these people?
Right.
I got to make sure they're taken care of.
Right.
I have to be, and that's not the only decision, right? It's not in mass. It's a small company. I want to have that assistant that stays with me until I die.
That's right.
I don't. So you have to take care of them, and that costs, and so does everything.
Yes.
So I understand that. But on the other side, I've also worked for places that were just completely horrible to me and got away with doing the absolute bare minimum to legally pass.
And that's wrong too.
Yeah.
No. And that's wrong too.
And I can understand the juggling, and I don't really have an opinion one way or the other, right?
Right.
If you're an employer out there, take care of your people. That's kind of where I feel about it. And that other side I feel is where this was legislated towards, the ones that don't. And I think if we all come together and take care of our people, maybe as a community, we can make a compromise before we just rely on the government to do it.
Yes. And there's a conversation to be had about that too. Some people don't want the government saying this is the minimum wage. This is what you have to pay your people. Some people would love for you just to negotiate. And if I say to you, Ryan, will you come do this job at my house for this much money? And you say, sure, then we've negotiated, right? Yeah. But the sad thing is, people weren't taking good care of their employees. So lots of times, that is what happens. And that's why government does step in to make sure it's fair. But, that goes back to kind of how I make a vote, right? So it's not always just about my opinion or what I think, because I, of course, have opinions on all these things, my own opinions, but I have to gather research. I have to hear folks. And at the end of the day, it is my decision to make, but I try to make it not just from my own mind and my own heart, but from what I've heard. And, when I have small business owners who have been staples in my communities for decades say, I'm not going to be able to stay open. We need some help with this. You have to hear that. We have to hear that.
And I think it comes with timing too, with inflation where it is, right? With the cost of everything going up.
That's right.
Coming up, we're still recovering from COVID. Like we're still getting our legs back under us from that. Tariffs, which is a whole other conversation.
All the things.
Yeah. It just seems like small business is just everybody's hand in their pocket. And I can understand whether I agree or don't agree. I understand where the legislature is coming from.
Yeah, that's right. And that's where I get a lot of times, Ryan. I have to kind of set aside, do I agree or disagree? Or do I actually see where everybody's coming from and I need to make a decision based on that? And, we said kind of that trickle down is what I keep saying. Yes, we're going to pay you more. And if the sick leave stays in place, how, though, is that going to happen? Your small business person is going to have to raise their prices. So there's the trickle-down effect of who's actually paying for that. Someone has to pay for that, right?
Always.
Yeah. So it's compromise. We just have to make those decisions.
So basically, if you're an employee, take care of your employees.
Yes.
That's where we're at. Take care of your employees. If you can't afford an employee, you can't afford a business. That's kind of how I feel about it. Make sure your employees are taken care of.
Yep. That's good,
where
Ryan.
we're at.
That's good. Just take care of each other in general.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I think that's it. And I know I need to get you out of here. I mean, we've talked for about 40 minutes. So, wonderful. I mean, it's been, do you have any parting words? Because we get a view or two.
Sure.
There's a person or two.
Part of my parting words is just thank you for what you do. I love the communication that you're giving to our communities. And I love to be part of that. Communication is extremely important to me, just in this role, especially, but making sure that our communities know what's going on in Lebanon and what things are happening. And so I just appreciate how you filled the gap in. You stepped in and there was a need in our community for communication. And so thank you for doing that. Thank you for having me. And it truly is an honor just to serve. And I do see my role as one of service.
Thank you all out there for tuning in. And of course, this is the internet. It lives on here forever. So if you're watching this not live and tonight or something, and you want to leave a comment, I'm sure Melissa, she knows where to find it and to talk, or for me or for anything else. Check out all of what Lebanon Now is doing. Thank you so much for saying that. We're putting a lot of work into rebuilding media and communication in this town. We're big enough now.
Yes. Well, thank you for doing that.
Like some people think we're such a small town, and other people are like, we're so big. Why don't we have these things? And I'm one of those, right? I'm one of those.
Yeah. Maybe on the communication note, I should say you can follow my Facebook page.
Yes.
Melissa Schmidt for Missouri. Like I said, I post a lot there. You can also reach me, melissa.schmidt@house.mo.gov is my email. My legislative assistant, who is a Hayden Brogdon, so he's a Lebanon guy.
Hayden, yes.
Yeah, we love Hayden. So if you know Hayden, you'll know who you're emailing, but he is hayden.brogdon@house.mo.gov. So please do reach out.
Absolutely. And for you all out there, whether you agree or don't agree, whatever that little letter in front of your name is, just be nice to each other. I think what's missing is civil conversations between people. We all are going to have different issues. The government's not there for your pleasure. It's there for our government. It's not the thing that is going to fit you right every time. And that doesn't mean that you need to go on the internet and be mean to people. So that would be my final thought.
Yeah. That's
all right. Well, I'm going to hit this button and we're going to get out of here.
Thank
you have a good day.
Yeah, you
and
too.
Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you.
Hold on, I lost the thing. So we just get to sit here awkwardly until this thing says we're off the air.